Well, first things first, I do apologize that you can't see my face yet, and I've had to learn the hard way. Never switch on your air conditioner when you're doing a stream. Might vary, though. Well, the World Cup is over, and as always, it is time to reflect. Fasten your seatbelts, or not. It's time to take our usual trip off to the boundary. Yes, people, as always, this is the Coach's Corner, and you are welcome in the company of me, yours truly. And of course, as the title makes it clear, this is, of course, the World Cup review. And this remarkable World Cup, of course, came to a climax on Sunday with the final that was hotly contested in Ahmedabad. And what was supposed to be India's party in Narendra Modi's hometown ended up effectively being a bit of an anticlimax, pretty much typified by the sight of the Prime Minister of India awkwardly walking up to the dais to present the trophy to Pat Cummins. And the confusion after that meant that nobody really knew what to do. Eventually, Pat Cummins' teammates joined him on the dais, and they celebrated together as champions. But as always, we are going to take a look at every single thing. And I do know that we do have something lined up. But obviously, with regard to the final, obviously, there are so many points to discuss, and we probably might not have time to get through all of them. And I am hoping to have some people join in very soon. And we also will have to take a look at the other 8 teams who did play in the tournament and just sort of run the rule on how they particularly played. Just want to check and see at the moment if, well, actually, I better not. So what I am going to do, first of all, while I wait for people to be on their merry way, is take the liberty of sharing, of course, the details of the match with you all. And hopefully we've got some people in the chat right now. Chelsea fan, as always, a big friend of the channel. Big up to you. Thank you very much for joining. And a reminder to everyone, do please keep hitting the like button and do subscribe if you possibly can. It really will do a great deal for us. And we do have our first guest, someone who I absolutely enjoy having on this show, someone making a much awaited return after a long time, the man, the legend, Mr. Kenny Ken. Good evening, sir, and how are you?
Hello, Manny. How are you? Yeah,
yeah.
I think the tournament didn't end the way we thought it would end. We thought it would be like a clean sweep of India and winning the final comfortably. But just shows you, man, in many World Cup games I've seen over the years, you play each other in the group stages. You play them again in the final. It's a different outcome. India beat Australia, where they set Australia a same sort of target, and then their bowlers managed to skill Australia out cheaply. But it was a different Australian side from the team that they met in the early group stages when Australia were just feeding away in the tournament. I think Australia just got their tactics perfect.
They did. They did. I actually, we will talk a little bit about that later on, and we are going to start with that actually. But first of all, we've got another guest in, Aaron Kai, better known as Arnie G. Good evening to you, and we will, of course, talk about it. But I think it's fair to say that we should now call you Nostradamus because you were not very confident of India defending that total.
I'd say semi-Nostradamus because I didn't even predict we'd get to the final, but we did. So. Yeah, I'll be a bit, bit humble pie and humble as well on that tag. I didn't want to be Nostradamus, of course. I was hoping I'm not. Rather see my country win the World Cup, but hey, there we are, man.
Well, hey, listen. You did a lot better than England did. And, of course, we came into the tournament as defending champions. And, a fat lot of good that did us. And I think, Kenny, you will agree with me on that. And we will discuss them. But of course, we are going to start with the main course being the final and all that. And to basically get the ball rolling, I will just have a very brief review of the final, courtesy, of course, of our dear friends from Cricinfo.
Yeah.
You will have to forgive me because sometimes this particular app to share something doesn't really work as well, but now it does, and I'm glad that I wasn't bothered by any of these advertisements. So the summary, of course, was that the final played on Sunday, the 19th of November at the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad. The details, of course, were that obviously Pat Cummins won the toss, electing to field first, which was a bit of a surprising decision. But there was a part of me that thought that given the nature of the pitch being a little bit dry, perhaps maybe he might have had something up his sleeve, and it certainly proved to be the case. As India had the opportunity batting first, and they certainly started very well with Sharma and Gill going great guns. Sharma in particular, I mean, maybe not so much Gill, but Sharma in particular was accelerating beautifully. But then Gill went quite early, and a magnificent diving catch to get rid of Rohit Sharma. Just think of Roelof van der Merwe against South Africa in the T20 World Cup, only perhaps more momentous on a bigger stage. And again, taking a look at the innings, there weren't really that much in terms of partnerships. A 67-run partnership for the fourth wicket between Virat Kohli and Rahul Lokesh was perhaps the highlight. Kohli and Rahul, of course, helping themselves to half centuries, but both of them, of course, were extremely slow. And then nothing really much else, and wickets being lost at regular intervals didn't really help their cause. And taking a look at the bowling as well, it was effectively Mitchell Starc leading the way at first, despite being a bit expensive. Hazelwood chipped in with 2. But a very special mention to Pat Cummins, the captain, obviously, who made the decision to bowl first, leading by example with a wonderfully economical spell of 2 for 34 from his 10, and, of course, taking the key wicket of the leading run scorer for the tournament, Virat Kohli. When he took his wicket with Kohli chopping onto his stumps, you could literally hear a pin hit the ground at the stadium. And what certainly was remarkable about it, and we will talk about it later, was how Cummins, kept India guessing and rotated his bowlers well. But when it came to the Australian innings, there really was nothing much to say. Australia started very well. India also looked as though they were coming into it with some early wickets for Shami and Siraj, although Siraj, it was Shami Bumrah rather, although Shami was a little bit expensive at times, not really able to get the seam position working well with the new ball. But once those 3 wickets were gone and Travis Head and Marnus Labuschagne got in, there really was only going to be one winner. And you take a look at the bowlers, the spinners basically were literally, toothless, it has to be said. 99 runs conceded between Jadeja and Yadav in their 20 overs combined. After a bright start, Bumrah faded. Shami also didn't really end up promising very much, and I do apologize for these ridiculous YouTube alerts, but that's what happens when you share screen, and that is the big risk there. And they kept in, they sort of ground the bowlers down. And when the bowlers lost energy and started bowling some bad balls, you could tell that it was going to be Australia's day. So that pretty much sums up the match in a nutshell. But Kenny, I think I'm going to start with you because I don't know if you had the opportunity to watch the final on that Sunday, or if you did, maybe you'll have a better idea. But I also did send you a message in the group personally when I told you that you weren't really a fan of Pat Cummins' captaincy in lieu of the Ashes. But this particular final, he actually got his decisions and his bowling changes right. And maybe it's fair to say that the Australians having a lot more in terms of bowling options, I think that probably, weighed in on his decision to bowl first, because the seamers might not necessarily have been, starring all tournament, except maybe for Starc. But they performed their jobs brilliantly, and even Zampa recovered magnificently after being hit around in the first 2 games. But what was also interesting was how Cummins kept rotating his bowlers, bowling Mitchell Starc from different ends, so that the batsmen kept guessing and just never knew what to do. And the much-vaunted batting lineup were literally like rabbits in headlights. So what's your take on that? Would you concur with everything I've said?
Yeah, I do concur with it. I think the situation is that for India to, won the game, they will need massive, massive totals and at least a century for one of their main players, because when you look at the tournament throughout and you look at the Indian team, they don't bat. If you take away their main batsman, you get into the bowlers. They're not world class batsmen. They're not like the Australian who can bat all the way down the order. India can't, and I think that's where the problem lay in this final as well. Is that Cummins making that decision. The first thing that struck me what Cummins said is that he thought the bat would be easier in the second innings, and he was proved right, because in terms of like how Australia bowled. They basically gave India virtually nothing to hit. India to work for their runs. It wasn't a case where in previous games where there was a lot of bad bowling and India would clean up. Australia bowled really disciplined. They got wickets really early, and as you said, in the crucial times, Stark, got his wickets. I thought Hazelwood bowled as well. He didn't get as much success as anything else, but whenever Australia needed a wicket, they needed Cummins. And I thought, as well with Australian spinners, they bowled quite well. Maxwell got a crucial wicket, in the innings, and obviously Zampa as well, albeit only got one wicket, but he gave India nothing to hit with. He bowled really quite economically for modern cricket. So that was the situation. In terms of the second innings, I thought that India needed quick wickets in order to defend the title. But if you noticed, the ball started moving around in the first few overs. Then afterwards, pitch kind of flattened it out, and it became like a non-event for me, because I thought Lavishane batted like a test batsman, and he allowed Head to just, like I said, go for anything that. Anything was bad balls, and a lot of them weren't bad balls, but there was no movement. There was nothing for the spinners. There was certainly nothing for the seamers as well. And only Steve Smith knows why he didn't review that LBW, because there was no way that was hitting the wicket. Why he did it, I don't know, but it didn't make a difference. I thought Australia, were a worthy team, but you know what? I think. This reminds me of Australia 99 World Cup, where Australia started slowly again. They lost games, and then they had that crucial game against South Africa, and then they just went on that winning streak where when Australia get into that groove, they're hard to beat. They're clearly the best tournament team I've seen in years in cricket.
Oh, yes.
And it's not just, especially when it comes to the 50-over tournament. There's no accident they won their sixth tournament, but in terms of India, there's controversy with the pitch. I thought the pitch for the World Cup was about right, but I didn't think that pitch helped India, especially with the fact that their batsmen, really they didn't bat all the way down the order.
Agreed completely, but Aaron, I'm going to come to you right now, because obviously, while Cummins was successful tactically, there are going to be some huge questions, of course, about what could have been done differently as far as India were concerned. And the big question that I have is, on a dry wicket like that, you would think that would have been perfect for India to play three spinners. Instead, they ended up going with the same combination that pretty much served them well throughout the rest of the tournament. That is basically two left-arm spinners in Kuldeep Yadav with the Chinaman and the more orthodox left-arm spinner, Ravi Jadeja. The big problem is, as Kenny has sort of alluded to, with the exception of Jadeja, although his batting hasn't really been good, neither of those two guys really are proper batsmen who can really, offer very much. And, maybe Jadeja can, but his batting returns weren't really that good. And the less said about Kuldeep Yadav, the better. And what struck me the most about how those two bowled was that there didn't seem to be any kind of variety in their bowling. And Yadav in particular, although he was still able to get the ball to come out of his hand, it just didn't seem to, spin enough for me. I don't even know if he had any sort of flight. And I think on two occasions, Head just got down on one knee, sort of reminiscent of how Alan Border used to do for Australia, and Kenny will remember that, and just hoik him all the way over deep mid-wicket for six twice. So that begs the question. There was talk about the possibility of playing Ashwin Ravichandran ahead of Mohammad Siraj in that game to have three spinners. And we've all seen Ashwin bowl over the years. He does provide a great deal of variety. And bowling on those subcontinental pitches, especially the dry pitches, would have been right up his alley. And of course, he did earn his selection eventually for the squad after Akshar Patel was ruled out. So Maybe that would have been that was something that could have been changed as well, because tactically that would have been perfect. But in addition, in as much as the bowlers never really gave India a sniff, could the batsmen perhaps have been a bit more courageous and tried to take a few more chances, or at the very least, try and grind them down, or be a little bit more patient?
No, most definitely. They had to go for it. And I feel the minute Sharma got out, we lost the plot. All our bravery went down the window. For whatever reason, I don't know. And see Kohli even playing very conservatively really confused me. Now, Rahul, I'm not too sure because I have my reservations about that guy. Sky, I was a bit surprised with as well. I mean, he tried towards the end, but again, he held back. I don't know why. The platform was set for him. This was the game where it was his time to shine, like he has been in the T20s. And he could have played it like a T20 innings as well. So I don't know what went wrong with him. Also, I feel we're missing a Thakur type of player here. Lord Thakur should have been on this pitch. Even though he wasn't picked in the initial squad, he should have been, because that final, someone like him would have been very handy. Even if it was him over Siraj, because he can bowl as well. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, but how exactly would Thakur have made a difference, though?
Well, he would have been the extra batsman for starters. He could have provided those maybe 20, 30 odd valuable runs, maybe even more. As we've seen, he's very capable of doing that. If he has a good day at the ball, we all know what he can do. Definitely would have done, I think, better than Siraj, who, by the way, came off a very bad performance in that semi-final. So playing him wouldn't have been my pick either. Axar should have definitely been on over Jadeja. The only pick I'd keep was Kuldeep. We didn't see him having that bad of a game, but it's not something I'd have changed anyway. I'd have taken my chance with him and kept him on. I don't feel the third spinner like an Ashwin. Maybe that was a gamble that paid off, even though the result didn't go our way. As we've seen, the spinners did not come in handy, neither Jadoo nor Kuldeep. But I feel with Axar, I'm not too sure, but we could have had that depth in batting as well to pile on more runs on the board.
Believe me, though, I remember. Yeah, but I remember seeing Akshar Patel bowl for India during the World 2020, and believe me, against England in the semi-final, he came an absolute cropper. So there's hardly any chance he would have done very much. And then here's the thing. I mean, it was justice in a way that Akshar had to sort of leave the squad, unfortunate as it was for him, and Ashwin got in, because you can't have a bowling attack without a really good off spinner, and especially with an off spinner who can bowl a tight line and at least have the variety that Ashwin does. You can't just ignore him like that. And it could very well be, in my opinion, that we may never see him play for India again, because why should the poor bloke continue to work his backside off in training and still remain on the fridges? Maybe you'll agree with me on that. And Kenny, you might have seen Ashwin bowl. Do you think he should just quit international cricket altogether and continue playing T20 and maybe some first-class cricket in England or Australia?
Well, it's a consideration, because, when you look at his record, and you look at the fact that that he is wicket taker, it's astonishing that he doesn't get more games. But then again, India probably want a bit more variety. And remember, when you look at Indian cricket, they've got a lot of players to choose from. Loads that in terms of a conveyor belt of talent, there's a lot of players who score centuries or get wickets. Both seamers and spinners who won't get a game for India because there's not enough talent coming through. But in terms of Ashwin, you can always talk about in terms of hindsight that Ashwin couldn't get a game. But let's not forget, India had what I thought was a perfect tournament all the way through until the final. You could say India choked. I don't think they choked. I just thought that there was no way whatsoever Australia were going to lose it. I think when it comes to finals, you're always going to put your money in Australia, especially when it comes to 50-over cricket. They just have that sort of mentality. They're like the Germans of cricket. So in that respect, the Ashwin thing, I think you've got to remember that, it's not as if this happened overnight. Ashwin has been left out for a lot of games. Let's not forget the Test Championship final as well,
exactly,
albeit a different format. But in the Oval, everyone's going Ashwin. They didn't play him in the Test Championship final. So it's not as if this has just happened overnight. I think you are right. Ashwin may have to look elsewhere because, you know, he's not being selected. They tend to be favouring like the left arm spinners and obviously left hand leg break bowlers rather than Ashwin. So it is a consideration, but I don't think it had any bearing on what happened on Sunday. It's just that the pitch didn't suit India. Definitely didn't suit their spinners, and it was as flat as a pancake. Which, let's face it, most of the wickets that the ICC will pick for a final would be like that. They want their final. They want the kind of final that we had 4 years ago, where it's quite similar. The totals, over 240 plus to win the title, and they wanted a bit of excitement. Clearly, obviously, Australia didn't come to the party. They were just ruthless. But I don't think Ashton would have made any difference. In that second. It was basically whoever won the toss will win the final. Blatantly, if you look at one-day cricket nowadays, white ball cricket, before you had to bat first, and then you put the opposition under pressure. Now, a lot of teams are now bowling first. But teams want to chase. It's what I mean. Cricket nowadays these days.
Yeah, but even then, I mean, in as much as teams may want to chase, I mean, they will have to read the wicket. And of course, in '96, one of the few times Australia lost a World Cup final, I think Sri Lanka won the toss, put them into bat. They didn't score too many. Mark Waugh and Steve Waugh and company were kept quiet. And then Aravinda De Silva and Arjuna Ranatunga and Sanka Gurusinha just battered them out the game. So Shane Warne didn't have a good game that day. The Indian spinners also flopped on Sunday. Almost a similar script, and that was also held in the subcontinent, by the way. Yeah. By the way, we have a new guest, of course. A very good evening to Martin Talbot. Welcome, sir, and thank you very much for joining us. How are you? You're muted, sir.
Sorry, being too cautious. Yes, hello. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Can't complain. And obviously, we are talking about the final. And we will obviously get you to introduce yourself a little bit later on. But first of all, if you saw the final on Sunday, and I'm assuming you probably did, what was your impression of it? And did you would you agree with some of the things that Kenny and Arnie have just said so far?
To be honest, I've only just joined, so I heard the
Check
back end of Kenny. Yeah.
Speak up, tabs.
Sorry, you hear me now? Yeah. I just thought that India got stuck between a bit of a rock and a hard place. They tried to possibly second guess the conditions instead of perhaps just getting out there and doing what they're good at. And because they've been batting first and racking up scores, they had that middle period when they hardly scored a boundary for a good number of overs, which isn't India-like at all. I just think they got a bit stuck in, shall we think about the pitch conditions over and above the way we normally go about our business. And I think that was to their detriment in the middle phase of their innings. And it cost them, for me, it cost them dearly. But Australia played magnificently well. You can't take anything away from them. But I just think India, with the quality they had at the wicket at that time, just lost their mojo a little bit. Perhaps they got almost a bit of stage fright with the 90,000 suddenly really wanting them to win. I think there was a bit of that, a bit of all the factors that probably hadn't been, or some of the factors that hadn't been in their previous 9 winning matches. Suddenly they started to think about it a bit too much, whereas before they'd just been breezing through, doing their stuff, winning games. But you can't go in any final, in any situation, especially with the quality at the wicket, you can't go that long in an innings. In any match, really, any 50-over match without getting boundaries on the board, and they just lost their way, I think. Aaron doesn't agree, thinks.
No, I was nodding, like saying, yeah, it's ridiculous.
And Australia just, after their wobble at the start, I mean, Head was just outstanding. You can't, if you lose to an innings like that, then you have to hold your hands up. That was a cricketing
exactly
gem of an innings. You can't you can't criticise too much yourselves if you've been beaten by an innings like that. But yeah, I just think India should have had more. It wasn't a 380 wicket, I think, silly like that, but it was more than 240, and they just lost their middle. They lost their way in the middle, which is unusual because that's usually when they put their foot down. Sorry, man, go on.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I was just saying, of course, that obviously England and New Zealand played the first game of the tournament at that stadium, and New Zealand actually ended up creaming England by about 9 wickets. So maybe chasing would have been the better option. Although, ironically, when Rohit Sharma was asked what he would have done at the toss, he said that he would have batted first anyway. And it was disappointing, really, because he was starting well and he was getting the boundaries. I think that catch pretty much, put an end to it. But it was a bit of a shame how, the likes of Kohli and others were sort of cowed by the occasion. You'd think that someone like Kohli would have really risen to the challenge. And now this is an interesting question, of course. Obviously, I'd put this up. I'm going to start with you, Martin, because obviously you've joined, and then I'll get Aaron and then Kenny to answer this question. Now, the question is, obviously, he says, sad that Hanno can't join, but congrats to Australia. And there's a question raised. How can Kohli be crowned as one of the best in the world because he doesn't have a proper trophy with him? Now, that might be a little bit harsh because if memory serves me right, he was actually a member of the squad which won the 2011 World Cup. Maybe he didn't have much of a role to play then. And he also was...
he ran a ball almost in that innings, in the final, against Sri Lanka.
Oh, he did. Then listen, I mean... Yeah, listen, then that settles it then, because really, if he went his whole career without winning anything, then you could possibly raise some questions. But he's had his share of Test victories as skipper. He obviously has made history, by being one of the few Indian captains to win a series against Australia in Australia. So I think that pretty much, silences the debate. I think one of the reasons why people are... Yeah, but I'll come to you. And listen, I'll come to Martin first. And I think one of the reasons why people are talking a little bit about Kohli in such, critical terms is that, in the tournament, he actually went one above Sachin Tendulkar's tally of, I believe it was half centuries for India, something like that. He's still going on quite strong. I don't think he will necessarily overhaul Tendulkar's tally of international runs for India, but he is still going to end up as one of the greatest. But he scored over 700 runs this tournament. He did score 50 in the final. Was very unlucky to be on the losing side. So I think this question really is a no-brainer because he is an all-time great and one of the best. He does have some trophies and silverware to prove it. I think people are just going to take a look at the many defeats and say, if you choke so many times, you can't be a great. But he has his share of successes. So surely he should be considered a success. And I just wonder maybe if he shouldn't have, resigned the captaincy as well as Rohit Sharma has done for India. Martin, would you like to go first, sir?
Yeah, I think you can still be a great player as Kohli is, an absolutely brilliant player. I think trophies can be a bit of a smokescreen. The number of trophies got on doesn't detract from how good you are in a team game. It doesn't detract from how good you are necessarily. I don't think you should the notch in the bedpost is the number of trophies on your mantelpiece. I think it's the quality you've served up consistently to have those numbers of the number of centuries, the number of half centuries, the numbers in this tournament alone shows the consistent quality that he is match in, match out, or tournament in, tournament out. And if you've got and a lot of team games, as we know, is how the players do around you as well that are in your team. India aren't a one-man team with Kohli by any means. He's just missed the consistency that the others need to try and sort of stick with and go with. So yeah, it's not the number of trophies that I shouldn't be the number of trophies that gives the greatness to a player in a team game. Individual game, yeah, that's totally different. Snooker, it's totally different approach. But in a team game, he's going to be up there and named in one of the greats for as long as we can all remember. So, yeah, that's me on Kohli and others like him. Messi and the number of international trophies and stuff that shouldn't count for him either. Just it's what you produce week in, week out, match in, match out, and he produces it at the highest level, and he's great to watch. So
wonderfully said. Aaron, what's your view on that?
First and foremost, Hansel, can I mention you forget that he was the first individual, I say individual because that Australia series, he carried the whole team through, not just won that series in T20, the first ever whitewash we done, and it's our first win ever in Australia. And then again to go and do it in, was it 2-3 years, and beat them 2-1. I think in between we drew, but we haven't lost since then. I think we've never lost a series in Australia coming to that format. That's just one example. Now, I think when he said trophies, he meant international trophies because, if I'm not wrong, he's won quite a few Asia Cups as well on both formats, which one of them being recently as well, as we know, against 50 Lanka. Not taking digs there at all. Hi, Steve. And then all the other stuff that he's done, beating New Zealand as well, in New Zealand for the first time again in the history of the Indian cricket team ever. And like Tab said, all these accolades that he's accomplished over the years, which he's earned himself that right to be one of cricket's greatest batsmen going. So, I mean, there's so much to it that I can add, but I'll be here forever if I do. So that's my summary.
Yeah, not a problem, not a problem. And Kenny, you are probably one of the few people I know, and I'm sure Martin might be one of them, maybe Mr. B might be one of them. I think you've watched Sachin Tendulkar since the beginning of his career, and now you've seen Virat Kohli. I think you'll pretty much concur that Kohli deserves to be an all-time great, but now I'm going to put you on the spot here. If you were to have to choose which of those two at a pinch you'd pick in a World 11, an all-time test or one-day 11 or what have you, would it be Kohli or would it be Tendulkar?
Well, the thing is, right, you've got to first and foremost remember Kohli scored 50, was it one day hundreds in lesser games than Tendulkar, and that's something that people don't realise. In terms of limited overs cricket, Kohli's a more exciting, more modern batsman in terms of like getting his runs, and he gets them really quickly than Tendulkar is. Tendulkar is a very much of a mixture of a little bit of Kohli, but there are times that he protects his wicket a lot more than Kohli does. He's a bit like Sunil Gavaskar. So in that respect, they're kind of different players, but I understand the question, and it's a very pertinent question because you think about it, all-time greats have won trophies. Gavaskar won the World Cup in '83. Tendulkar won it in 2011. And if you want to go to the West Indies, Richards won it in '75 and '79. And then if you want to go to Australia, Warnes won it in '99, and obviously Ponting's won it a few times. So, we do look at like great players, and we say what you've won. Obviously, Kohli's a bit of an exception, and he is open to debate. But let's not forget, Kohli was part of a team that has lost 2 World Test Championships. So he's had loads of opportunities. He hasn't delivered. He lost 2 World Championships, one to New Zealand, one to Australia. Obviously, he's lost the World Cup final as well. And, his best chance, in my opinion, of him winning a trophy was in the 2016 T20, where somehow they found a way, his team found a way to lose to West Indies, who went on to win the tournament anyway. But he's had a lot of opportunities, more opportunities to win trophies than Gavaskar ever had. And to a certain extent, because when Gavaskar played, the only trophy available was the World Cup every 4 years. And Gavaskar managed to do it against the odds against West Indies '83. Tendulkar finally won it in 2011. So if you base it on that, then yeah, maybe not. But in terms of what Virat Kohli's done, let's not forget what he did in Australia, captain India in Australia in 2018. I think, what was it? India's first test win overseas in Australia ever. And then obviously he wasn't such a prominent figure when they won it 2 years ago. Because remember, he went home for because I think his wife was giving birth. So he was actually playing in the game when India were 36 all out, I think. And then obviously he went home. So he has some greats. I personally think he is a great. He is an all-format player. His record at T20 is unbelievable. His record at, I just mentioned his record at one day is, 50 one-day hundreds, 20 more than 20 more than Ricky Ponting, who I believe is probably one of the greatest batsmen I've ever seen. But, you know, say you got to talk about greatness, and then you have to look at his record at Test cricket. It's up there. So as a multi-format player, he definitely is going to be an all-time great. But just without silverware, obviously he had a minor part in 2011. But, you know, the opportunities to, you know, cement it, he's missed out big time. You know, 2 finals in the Test Championships, should have won the 2016 and then this one. So, you know, it is open for debate. But for me, as a player, all day long, he's an all-time great.
Yeah. And so not having a proper trophy on him, I think we can put that to rest. He has a few trophies, could have had more, but as we all agree, trophies don't necessarily, you know, define the player. Mr. B, if you are here, 2 questions. Let me ask you about your view on Kohli and where he, how he compares to some of the all-time greats. And then after that, you can give your reflections on the final.
Well, basically, I think Kohli's brilliant. You know, awesome player. Always thought he was great. I obviously got that bit of cockiness, as we all know, the great players have. You know, the big ego and stuff. And you know, we know he can produce. But I think obviously you got the little master, which was Tendulkar, who I think he was magnificent. He wasn't called the little master for nothing, you know. So he was incredible. But I think Kohli probably is going to get as great as him if he isn't already. But obviously going back to the cricket, this tournament, I thought it was fantastic tournament. Unfortunately, we weren't great. We were terrible. England. So, you know, I'm looking forward to
we'll talk about England in a minute. But what were your opinions on the final?
Yeah, the final was great, mate. I thought it was brilliant. You know, it was quite fairly, well, I was going to say close to begin with, but sort of Australia ran away with it in the end. Unfortunately, I can't stand this lot here behind me, but I'm not going to say I admire them. You know, I mean, you know, for coming back. You know, because everyone thought they were dead, didn't we? We all thought they were dead at the start of this tournament, and that was it. You know, they're not coming back, and India have got it all the way. They're going all the way, India, and that's what I thought. You know, but the Aussies proved us all wrong again, I'm afraid. But you know, so congrats to them, I guess. But you know, hopefully we'll do them again sometime in the next Ashes and whatever. When that comes up again, I hope we can beat them, because I hate the way they go. They're arrogant and all that. But, you know, it'd be great to knock them down a peg again at some stage. But for now, yeah, it was great. I think it was a great tournament. There was upsets, of course, you know, with Afghanistan and all that, Netherlands and whatever. So there was a few great games and upsets. So, you know, looking forward to the Test matches with India now. We got those coming up. So for England.
Oh yeah, and listen, I did remember telling you that the last time India and England played a Test series after the World Cup, we creamed them 4-0. We made a mockery of their so-called World Championship status, and of course, Duncan Fletcher, who had coached England and who returned to England with India, didn't enjoy a happy return to his former stomping grounds, did he?
That's right, Manny. But you know, hopefully it'll happen again. Let's hope.
Yeah. And of course, for the Ashes, you know, the Aussies might not be with Warner, they might not be with Khawaja. You know, maybe Stark might not even be around. I don't know. So that's a good portion of their team gone. We don't even know if Nathan Lyon will be there. So maybe we might have a chance. But it is back to the one-dayers, and of course, I think it's fair to say that when we talk of India and Australia, we can say that India as a team were magnificent in the earlier stages, but when it came to the final, I think the word is froze. They didn't choke, they froze. And I think maybe, you know, this will be a sort of a lesson for them in a way. Sadly, for several players in that team, this may very well be their last chance at winning a World Cup. And you have to feel for Rahul Dravid, the Indian coach, who was unfairly denied a chance to be a part of that 2011 winning team as a player. And as a coach, he could have been a World Cup winner, but he didn't have that chance. I do hope that he continues as coach, because he does have an excellent record of developing youngsters and really working with them and helping them shine. But it will remain to be seen whether the BCCI are willing to, continue with that. And as for Australia, I think Kenny pretty much said it. The best tournament team of all time. As in '99, they started terribly, but they found confidence and momentum. I remember Steve was saying that they would win 7 straight games to make sure they won the title. Of course, they ended up winning 6 and tying 1, but, potato. And in the same way, Australia ended up winning 9 straight games and they won the title. Now, of course, we're going to have some very brief reviews of the other teams. But as with all newcomers, Martin, I'd like to welcome you once again and sort of ask you, it's terrific to have you here on the stream, of course, as a cricket fan. I'd like to sort of tell us, what were your biggest influences growing up, watching or playing the game? Did you enjoy playing? And how do you keep your interest in the game alive?
I first went to watch Somerset, which was my home county, and it's still my county of passion in the English game. And I was lucky enough, what was I then, 12 years old in 1974, when Ian Botham was just a 17-year-old lad coming into the Somerset team. And in those days, you had 2 overseas players in each county, and Somerset again. And when I was an impressionable teenage boy, if you like, following the game, you had Viv Richardson, Joel Garner, and Ian Botham in the same county team. So they were walking out in front of you week in, week out, not just in big games, in every single sort of get a fixture. There wasn't that many in those days, only a couple of competitions, but they were there every match, and they had a major influence on galvanising Somerset as a county. Therefore, the fans that go with it went with it, and then my interest in cricket just stemmed from there. And I've not really missed going to a game or games during a season in that almost 50-year. Giving my age away now, but 50-year. It's probably my 50th year next summer coming up of actually attending matches. So, and I'm still as keen as the fixtures come out on Thursday, and I'm still as keen as ever to flick through those and plan my summer for next year, as I was watching Richards, Botham, and Garner at Taunton all those years ago, and other places. So, I used to travel around the country, and I've been overseas. I've done 2 Ashes tours not as a Barmy Army person, but as certainly a travelling supporter. Done a Caribbean tour, 2 in South Africa when I was obviously younger and didn't have the same commitments maybe. But yeah, so my background in cricket watching is my number one sport. I follow football to a certain degree, and I follow snooker, strangely maybe, to a certain degree, elite snooker I mean. So I go to the World Championships in Sheffield and stuff like that. So that's my sporting box of tricks, if you like. But yeah, cricket is my number one, and it was all
wonderful.
All stemmed from being a teenager watching the likes of Vivian Richards, Ian Botham, Joel Garner, giving Somerset their first ever taste of success after about 100 years.
Yes, and I think out of respect for time, I am not going to ask you about a certain Peter Michael Roebuck, God rest his soul. That's a story for another day, and we're not going to discuss that out of respect for you. Exactly. But of course, I think Mr. B alluded to it, and we are going to now have a review for some of the teams. We obviously have to start, of course, with England, and the title says it all. It was a disaster for the defending champions. Now, there's always going to be a part of me that feels that maybe the squad selection was a little bit misguided in several ways. And, certainly some of the tactics that were used were a bit questionable. Rob Key even came out and said that maybe he should take a great deal of the blame because, he, focused a lot more on tests to the detriment of one-dayers. Kenny, you obviously will have had a lot to say about the squad selection and, of course, a lot of the tactics that were used. And I remember watching your stories on Instagram saying, bring them home. Of course, I can just imagine some of the newspaper headlines. No cricket, please. We're English. I don't know why they weren't used this time around. But why don't you give us your take on why England failed and what they got wrong and what will be the hope for them going forward? And I want to go all around the panel as well, but I'll start with you, sir.
Well, first and foremost, my attitude is if like I said, if players retire from international cricket, You know what I mean? A bit like Stokes. Then what's the point of asking them to come back? You know, what England needed is that we needed Stokes to, you know, to be the all-rounder. We didn't need him just to bat. That's just a waste of a place as far as I'm concerned. And then going back to Joe Root, again, was strange. As good as a player Joe Root is, and as much as he's trying to play, you know, more white ball innings in order to get himself contracts in, you know, the IPL and get another shot at the, you know, like the 50 over competition, he was actually dropped by England. You know, like one of the last things Morgan was dropped, Joe Root. So once again, that those selections baffled me, especially Stokes when he's not fit. The guy's not fit. And I understand Australia took a risk with Travis Head where he broke his hand. But in terms of how, you know, McDonald explained it and Cummings explained it, there was a plan for Travis Head to go deep in the tournament. There was no kind of plan with England. But you know, it's like they were waiting for Archer when Archer hasn't played any cricket for a long time. And then they had to go to the last minute decision to bring back Willie. What for? You know, that it's just like selection was everything. It's like, I think what it was is that they believed the hype from winning a tournament in 2019, obviously winning the T20, you know, tournament in Australia. Yeah, you know, I thought that, you know, that players they should have built themselves around as younger players like Brooke. Obviously, keep Josh Buttler as captain as well, no doubt about that. But there's going back to Mo and Ali as well. Again, a seasoned operator, but if you're you know, players like Root, Ali, and all those players, you have to perform. At least with Australia, with their dad's army, they're still performing. Hazelwood performed. You know, Stark still performs. Yes, he's expensive, but he performed. Dave Warner turned up for the tournament. A lot of our experienced players just didn't turn up. Josh Butler didn't turn up. You know, a lot of people, a person who's going to probably get the can for this is Matthew Mott. He's probably going to get a can of it. And I suppose him and Butler need to realise one thing. When you're playing tournament cricket, it's not a mates thing. You get the best players available and you try to have the variety and a balance in the squad, which Australia had and India had. Hence the fact they got to tournament. And New Zealand to a certain extent. But it was just like, you know, people are going to blame them, you know, like I said, baseball and, you know, the situation that more resources are being put towards, you know, Test cricket. That does count for a lot, but I think that England have put more resources towards T20 and Test cricket as opposed to the 50 over tournament. I thought the 50 over tournament was just an afterthought. I didn't see many evidence of much warm-up games in order to get the you know, squad acclimatised. And when they finally got to India, it was a disaster from day one. You know, New Zealand were always going to thrash them afterwards. It was defeats of Afghanistan. You know, who did England really beat? They only beat, was it Bangladesh,
Pakistan,
Bangladesh and
Netherlands,
and the Netherlands. That's it. All the other teams, they got thrashed by South Africa when they got themselves in a very good position when the bowlers did a job for them, and then the batting was just they got South Africa.
It was India.
Yeah, no, but even so, against South Africa, they got into some difficulties, and then in the last 10 overs, they just let South Africa get away and post a big total.
Oh, yeah.
When the game was in the balance, and then India as well. That was a joke, but it's one of those things where I was right to say bring them home, because all I was seeing was players being there on reputation, players who shouldn't have even been in the squad, and that no young players come through and not even given a chance. So I was well within my rights to be critical of England. You know, heads have to roll, because you've got to ask, if Ben Stokes, you've got to say to Ben Stokes, thanks but no thanks. Concentrate on Test cricket, concentrate on the IPL. We don't need you for 2027. So it's got to be Operation 2027 there. And certain players
Completely agree.
have to be dropped. Root's got to go. Ali's got to go.
Yeah.
Without so Wood, you know, like Wokes has got to go as well. I'm sorry to say it, I'm being harsh.
Yeah.
Wokes has to go. Butler
Yeah.
is like I said, his captaincy is in a balance for me. And Rashid is another one. Got to go as well. We rely heavily on.
Done well. I thought Rashid performed well in the World Cup.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you're going to look at 2027, you've got to prepare for 27 and start getting these old guard out and start preparing for it. Because let's face it, this isn't 2019 where you had a worldie captain, Morgan. You had players who were on the team reputation, and really they'll one day cricket. 50 over cricket, although it's not taken very seriously as it should be. Australia, South Africa were taking the game to levels that England couldn't match, and you could put New Zealand in that category to a certain extent, and you could, what I mean. So it's one of the things where England just got left behind. But relying on taking an injured Ben Stokes, taking Joe Root, who they discarded. Discarded a couple of years ago. Now you're bringing him back. It was a disaster waiting to happen, and Moeen Ali as well. It's a disaster.
Agreed. I mean, to be fair to Joe Root, I mean, he is actually one of my favourite players in the England team, possibly my favourite. And he did start the tournament with a couple of good innings, but completely faded away. And some of the dismissals that he had in the tournament, I think, Mr. B, you can agree with me, verged on the utter brainless at times. And you think that for a guy who'd captained England before, maybe not in one day, but certainly in tests, and with all his experience, he'd know a little bit better. And he sort of, he's still quite young, and there is a part of me that thinks that maybe he can have a role to play in terms of, guiding some younger batsmen through. I mean, it is one thing to say, in my opinion, and Martin, I'm going to come to you here. It is one thing to say that we should do away with the old guard, and there is some wisdom to that. But then there are some players who could also benefit the team and benefit themselves from having a few games in between to sort of phase themselves out, but also, guide some youngsters through. But going back to the squad selection, I just wonder if you had any issues with the quality, and Martin, this is for you, sir. I just wonder if you had any issues with the quality of the bowling attack that we had. Kenny spoke about Ali and Rashid and how, Wokes had to go, but maybe the fast bowling looked a little bit light in terms of experience and maybe know-how. Should Chris Jordan have been on the team, on the squad? And about the Jason Roy controversy, how much do you think that might have affected morale in the team?
I just think England sleepwalked into this tournament a little bit across all the facets of the game, the bowling, the batting, and as you say, the Jason Roy sort of dropping, and that there was anything in life, if you get the little things wrong, the big things go very wrong. And right from the start, the messaging was wrong. They picked the squad with Jason Roy in it, and then they realised they needed Harry Brook in, and they shouldn't have been making those decisions on the eve of the tournament. It gives, as I say, the wrong messages to the rest of the group, thinking there's all these indecisions going on. And from the bowling, as you say, I just think it's very telegraphed. You can almost pick at the start. It was very sort of all the other opposition knew exactly how England were going to attempt to do it. There was no surprise element to their bowling as such, because we've reeled off all the names and Kenny's just done that. And those bowlers are just doing what they were doing 4 years beforehand, and teams get used to you. It doesn't matter, they get used to your style, what you want to do, and they didn't have the gall or the wherewithal to change things up. And as I say, there was no surprise element to what they were doing, and it all just became a slightly routine. And unfortunately, they got into a routine of losing, and that was the issue. But for me, the whole structure of the whole tournament management was completely wrong from point one, when they named the team, changed the team. Then they started talking about contracts and central contracts and all that. I know there's certain things that they want to get things nailed down, but that's not for mid-tournament discussion. It doesn't do the healthy of the. It's not healthy for the group, especially when you've got a week between matches to sit and ponder all these things that are going on. It's not like a couple of days and you're playing again. I mean, England's itinerary was you play on a Sunday and you don't play till the following Saturday. And a couple of times I think that happened. And you've got a week then to stew on all of this and fester and all these things that were, I don't think, right in the background. I mean, there's been rumours that the things were slightly wrong in the dressing room. We don't know that. Nothing's been. We'll have to wait for someone's book to come out to know that. But but there was something wasn't as clean cut as it was, and as you say, under the I don't particularly like Owen Morgan as a person necessarily, but his captaincy is superb, or was superb, and he just had everybody on a string when he was on the field, and we didn't have that this time. So, yeah, the bowling and the batting and everything about the whole facets of the game was mismanaged from point one. I think that's
right. Mr. B, I will have to just nip off for a minute, but you will get your chance to talk. And the question I'm going to ask you is, obviously, it might be sort of continuing off what Kenny and Martin were talking about. I want to get your thoughts on the squad selection and whether some players could have been picked. And interestingly enough, we had the World 2020 Championship winning squad there. There were a few players, of course, obviously, who are in this ODI squad, but some who weren't. Maybe some of those people should have been given some chances to play in the limited overs version and carry that winning feeling over. And maybe they could have added something to the squad. What's your take on that? And I'll be right back in a few minutes.
Well, I've got strong opinions on this, of course, because I felt it was a total crap show from England. I don't know why it happened. As Kenny's already said, and the other lads there have already said, that, you know, it was all, I don't know what happened. Was Rob Key to do with it or what? Or Josh Butler? I don't know. But, you know, the wrong players went for a start. The ones that weren't fit. Stokes, obviously, he was great at the end. He was brilliant, but it was too late. You know, with a bat, and he couldn't actually bowl or anything. And he's there as an all-rounder, Stokes. So, you know, what was the point of taking a half-fit Ben Stokes? I don't get that. Joe Root wasn't really up to it. He was great to start with, but, you know, he tailed off and his performances were bad afterwards. I don't think he's a limited overs player. I think he's a test player, Joe Root, and that's it. Not limited overs. You know, I think there's so much that they could have done. There's so many other players. I'd like to see a better dynamic of players. Will Jacks, Phil Saul, you know, these younger batsmen that are up and coming and doing it in the county scene and have already played for England. Luke Wood as well, another good bowler, quick bowler. Rian Ahmed, you know, why wasn't he taken, the spinner? You know, young player, very good spinner. A lot of them didn't perform. Bairstow was, I don't know what happened to him. He didn't perform either. I think Rashid did actually do well. I think he was great with the ball. He's one of the successes. Probably Milan, who I would actually I'd like to see as captain, David Milan. Now, I don't think Butler is a captain. I really don't. You know, I've got strong opinions about all this, as you know, Manny. So. I feel he shouldn't be captain, Butler. I'd put David Milan as captain, and I would bring these other younger in and still keep experienced players, because that's important. Keep some of the experienced players. But Ali was another one. Why they brought him back? Why he was brought back for the test? The Ashes. I didn't get that either. You know, he's failed again. And, you know, there was too many failures and it was just a total disaster. Some of them were good, as I said. Milan and Stokes near the end was great, but it was too late by then. You know, we was already out of it. I'm just glad we didn't finish bottom at the end of the day. That's one positive you can get from that. We didn't finish bottom and we did win 3 games, but at the end of the day, that's not good enough for a champions, is it? We were champions of this.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, it might have been actually better in some ways if we didn't qualify for the Champions Trophy, because that way that really would necessitate the process of completely ripping everything up and starting from scratch. I think with the Champions League qualification, a small consolation prize we can say, well, at least we have something to look forward to. I mean, the West Indies, for instance, failed to qualify for the tournament proper, and now they've got to start from scratch again. Hopefully, things might go well for them. But final question to you, Arnie, and you can make this brief. The gentlemen have mentioned basically that Ali and Rashid should no longer have a place in the limited over sides for England anymore. And as someone who's more of a spin bowling enthusiast yourself, where do you see England's future in terms of spin bowling? Any new prospects that might come? Maybe, Martin, you can also give some insights, but after Arnie?
Just before I get into that, let me also note that the 100, I've called it worst things off camera, so I think that's solely responsible for this. Yeah. Given that the players do not even represent their own counties on the national circuit, and to go for that franchise tournament, yeah, I'm sure it's the unspoken law here. To me, that's the elephant in the room anyway. But no one's talking about it for some reason. Not too sure why. I've been on forums where the discussion is much more. But just to note that one out. So that's my take on the whole performance thing. Especially after they lost the bottle job tags as well, having won the T20 World Cup, proving the odds wrong. And, defying all the odds. I never thought they would. But then to come up and have a performance like that, the World Cup, again, regardless of that competition, it's still unacceptable. But I do believe that's a major factor in contributing to this situation that the cricket team is in. So first and foremost, I'd pinpoint that one out. And now coming to your question about the spinners, I think Ali is more of an all-rounder. So I don't see how dropping him at this point would be warranted. In terms of Rashid, I'm kind of on the fence with him. I'm more of a kind of medium pace, fan myself anyway. Maybe more fast. Spinners are important, don't get me wrong. So, again, maybe Tabs can add more to what I've just said. But yeah, go on, Tabs.
Rayan Ahmed is the name that's been mentioned. Do you think he has a future?
Who's that, sorry?
Rayan Ahmed.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I'm sure Tabs will agree with this, but we've seen more of him in the county game, especially in the T20s as well. And now
you have got to be careful with spinners, particularly that you don't put them in to learn on the job at the top level. They've got to have some sort of grounding before they get pushed in. It's no good saying, he's good, he's here. I mean, as Aaron or Ali's just said, sadly at the moment, not one of those England players played 50 over cricket at the county level. And until you get back to at least some of the younger ones doing that and getting a bit of confidence, especially spinners, they need to play and play and play to get their rhythm and their confidence. You can't just wheel them out on a plateau in an international level and expect them to come good. Pace bowlers and medium pace bowlers, you can sort of get away a little bit with that, but spinners get found out very quickly by people like Kohli and the greats that we've been mentioning already tonight. So they've got to be prepared correctly, because it can destroy them completely if you're not careful. If they go and have one really bad tournament and get ripped apart at 18, 19 years old, it's a long way back. So you've just got to get that balance right. And in England, domestically at the moment, we haven't got that balance right. And there's not enough spinners coming through because the cricket isn't played at the right ends of the summer, really, for them to start getting their confidence that's the problem we've got. Because there's absolutely specialist spinners, and we haven't got the right balance in our domestic calendar to really get them prepared properly for international. Yeah, we can give them a go. They're good. They look good. Rayan is good. Put him out there. But I think it's almost a hope rather than a defined. They're ready. Well, that's the way I look at it.
Agreed. And I think it's fair to say, Mr. Talbot, that in the case of Simon Kerrigan, it is very much a case of, as Seamus Heaney would say, hope and history not rhyming.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So a very uncertain future for England, but one team in full flight, Afghanistan, one of the teams that did beat England, a huge shock. And I think it's fair to say that when Afghanistan did beat England, a lot of us had that sickening feeling, including you, Kenny, and Martin, and several others, that, this was not going to be our tournament. They actually surprised a lot of people by being able to qualify for the tournament proper, unlike Sri Lanka, who, of course, had to play the qualifiers to come through despite themselves being former champions. But the rise of this team has been absolutely phenomenal. We never really would hear much about them in previous tournaments gone by, but in this tournament, they were absolutely phenomenal in certain games. They very nearly beat Australia, only to be sunk by arguably the greatest one-day innings of all time. And, if other factors had gone their way, Arnie, no, I'm not going to have that from you. I'm sorry about that. And please don't interrupt me, all right? I'm sorry. But look, you have to really, without patronizing them, you've got to say that they've made some rises. And unlike the Kenyan team, which reached the semi-finals in 2003, only to completely flounder after that and sort of, go into oblivion, we haven't heard from them since. This team, if they're managed correctly, they will almost certainly continue to make some strides, especially impressively given the political situation back in their neck of the woods. And of course, one crumb of comfort is that they are, of course, coached by the former England batsman Ian Jonathan Leonard-Trott. It should have been Graham Thorpe, but sadly he had some health problems and had to withdraw. I do hope he's all right now. But Kenny, I will come to you and then Martin, obviously. I did mention John Trott coaching Afghanistan and imbibing maybe some of the spirit that he had while playing for England, obviously back in South Africa at youth level and with Cape Town, the Cape Province, obviously. And there are, of course, several players in that Afghanistan team which are quite experienced, and who have been in, major tournaments before and didn't really do well. What would you say was that thing which enabled them to just click like that so spectacularly?
Well, the thing is, it's the amount of cricket they're playing, and there are Afghanistan players playing in the franchises in world cricket. So BBL, you got players playing in the BBL. We've definitely got, and you got which is a good grounding. So it wasn't a shock in terms of the results they were getting. In terms of, as you said, they qualified the tournament proper, but the England result was a shock, but it wasn't. They're very disciplined, both with bat and ball. But I think, and that's one of the reasons why they were able to have a good tournament for them. Obviously, they didn't get to semi-finals. I always look at if you do play tournament game, at least get to semis. That's what I consider as a good tournament. But the format of the tournament was such that the best four teams were always going to get through, but they're always going to be a situation where Afghanistan was a team that you didn't really want to play. You didn't want to sort of like drop a banana skin against. But you mentioned Troy, being like the coach and everything. But for me, I think Afghanistan cricket is in a good state. And so I don't think anyone should be shocked. You should never underestimate, teams from that region, because everyone, when you look at the region, all you talk about is England, India, and Pakistan. And obviously, when Sri Lanka had that great team in the 90s, it was Pakistan, and now Bangladesh as well. They're coming to it a bit, but I think Afghanistan will maze. But the problem is that again, it's the money, isn't it? They're not going to get the resources that like maybe in India would get, and obviously Pakistan, and so the talent that will come through isn't going to sort of reach the cream of the top. Whilst Pakistan, they just got talent coming from all corners of Pakistan, and they're always going to have a conveyor belt. But as Afghanistan play to the best of their ability, to Pakistan just, I don't know, if there's a country with so much talent that just self-harms, it's Pakistan. But that's the thing. Afghanistan are where they are because of the fact that they will get the most of their ability. Hence the fact that it wasn't a shock to me that they had a reasonably good tournament for them.
Yeah, and I did, of course, mention the Kenyan team that shocked the world by reaching the semi-finals in 2003. I believe they beat the likes of Zimbabwe and Sri Lanka on the way, but after that, they completely faded into oblivion. And of course, you did mention, Kenny, interestingly, that maybe they might not quite get to the cream of the top, but maybe they will probably maintain themselves being thereabouts, and maybe that could sort of be the way they go forward with their reach always being bigger than their grasp, perhaps, and if they can strive more further. The big problem is, though, and Martin, I'll come to you, and maybe you can offer me some insight on this, is that several players in that Afghanistan team are also very, very experienced. Some of them, like Mohammed Nabi, might not be in the team for very much longer. So you do see a good balance of youth and experience. The only problem is there's very little in terms of that middle ground. So do you also share my hope that Afghanistan cricket can, go further from this? And how best do you think they can build on this?
I certainly share your hope that they will. This isn't a one-off. Well, I say a one-off. They've set their bar very high in this tournament, so they've got to think carefully how they go about staying at least to that level. It was great to have them sort of almost an interloper, just shaking rattling a few cages in this tournament. And as you say, they've got a great blend of experience and youth at the moment. But when the experience drops away, or one or two of the experienced players are not going to be available, and we're looking at 4 years' time, you just hope that the players that have had first ground experience this time, or first time experience this time around, can become the leading sort of experience in 3 or 4 years' time as they go towards the next World Cup. I don't know what the resources are behind this current team, and that's the key to whether they can keep that bar as high as they've got it at the moment. Yes, this is the peak of their power at the moment, I think, with as you say, the blend of experience, the blend of youth and the enthusiasm of youth. Was great to watch, and it was a delight to watch all the matches that we did. But it's because they're new kids on the block to a certain extent, it's whether those new kids can become the experienced heads that are needed to bring the next new kids along. And I don't know what that gravy train is like in Afghanistan cricket. So we hope it's there. We hope it's there, but I just think I hope it's just not a one-off group that clicked under the brilliance of Trot. We just need to see how they move forward in the next couple of years or so, and it's, as I say, it's what they've got coming through, and whether the younger ones now can become the experienced quality and sort of team members that they need.
Yeah, I mean, we saw obviously with Kenya, when the likes of Steve Tikolo, Asif Karim, and Morris Adumbe retired, the team never really was going to be quite the same, and obviously, they faded away. I do hope that doesn't happen with Afghanistan. But before I come to Arnie, quick question to both of you, Kenny and Martin. Afghanistan versus Australia. Did Afghanistan choke, or was that just a sensational win for the Aussies?
Sensational win for the Aussies. Simple as sensational for the Aussies. Afghanistan did really well, but again, it's batting seconds, isn't it? When the pitch dies, and there's nothing, the pitch dies, the ball doesn't spin, the ball doesn't seam, and the ball comes perfectly on the bat. Everything went well for him. Like I said, Glenn Maxwell that day, simple as, and
right.
It was one of those things where what Glenn Maxwell did really well was that when it's a bit like what Travis Head did in the final. When you're on a roll, you become very difficult to bowl at. All the plans, in terms of the length you should bowl. What's happening is that you get intimidated by the batsman. For instance, before you want to bowl a Yorker, so say he sees a Yorker coming, so he moves further out his crease to negate, like I said, the Yorker length. Boom, it's out of the ground, and that's what he did. When you're on a roll, you become difficult to bowl against. I think that's what's happened. They nearly got there with 7 wickets, but the situation is that Cummins sacrificed himself by just basically I'm going to stay with him. So basically, what will happen is that what Afghanistan didn't do well is that they kind of kept like I said, they didn't get Cummins enough on strike. If they got him more on strike, then who knows, it might be a different game. But I think Maxwell did really well to basically rotate the strike and make sure he had a majority bulk share of the strike. But when you're in that groove, doesn't matter who you are as a bowler, you just become difficult to bowl against.
And I'm sure when you take a look at the role Cummins played, it kind of reminds you of Robert Charles Russell along with Michael Atherton against South Africa. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. But it is one of those things that sometimes, both of them was like that in his pomp. He just became really difficult to bowl against because everything that was middled. All of a sudden, the bowlers think, "What do I do now?" When you're in that mindset, you're bowling. What do I do now?
Exactly.
Batsmen do it. Just getting their grooves. You saw some innings from like Kohli in the World Cup. Again, when you're in that groove, Maxwell. It wasn't because people talk about Maxwell's greatest ever innings. He had a similar. He had an early innings where he got a massive daddy 100 as well. So again, it's one of those things that I wouldn't blame Afghanistan. I would just give Maxwell more credit where he just middled everything.
Yeah, you mentioned he was on a roll, but at one point the bloke couldn't even walk due to cramps and a few back spasms. But Martin, do you concur? Was that just a good win for the Aussies, or do you think the Afghans choked?
Oh, they didn't choke, but they did miss their golden chance to get Maxwell out early on in his innings. There was a chance that went down, which it wasn't easy, but it was international. It was an international catch, if you see what I mean. An international cricketer should have grabbed it, and that was their one moment.
Okay.
And then I think they slipped into hoping for a mistake. When you're 91 for 7, you think, well, and you're the opposition to 91 for 7. You just think, well, they'll make a mistake in a minute. They'll make a mistake in a minute, and before you know where you are, it's 160 for 7 and 200 for 7, and they just lost.
Right.
They just let the mindset go. They just sort of were, it'll be out in a minute. It'll be out in a minute. And they just were waiting for it to happen instead of trying to make it happen. And as Kenny said, they got into the same routine of just bowling the same delivery and feeding his strengths. I mean, his strengths all ran the wicket all the time. It was a brilliant.
Right.
Nothing, So I just think they had their one chance. They spurned that. Maxwell grabbed it with both hands and more. And then Afghanistan thought, well, let's just wait for the mistake.
Okay, so Arnie, you have two venerated fans saying that it wasn't a choke and Australia were just too good on the day. Maxwell was just outstanding. You've been critical of the Afghan players saying that was the biggest choke. Aaron, please, you've been critical of them saying that it's the biggest choke in history. Why are you at least now willing to give them a little bit more credit, perhaps? Come
on. Credit.
As much as I give the Aussies credit for that win, I do want to mention Cummins not because very underrated. But you can't be bottling it like that. Come on. 7 wickets done. The partnership was 200 as well. Okay, barring the drop catch, you still had all that time to at least contain them, if not get a wicket. And that, I mean, I'm taking nothing away from him. That is definitely one of the greatest knocks I've seen in one-day internationals, right? But when you have all that room, it's kind of experienced bowlers to a point. You can't let that slip. And that's where my issue lies with them. So that I haven't seen it this bad, especially at 7 down as well. And it gave Cummins the opportunity to play it test style as well. I mean, for me anyway, you just can't be putting that one away. That's where I'm at.
No, but well, listen, if it makes you feel any better, I'm sorry to have to mention this, but you've got 4 England fans sitting over here, and none of us will need to remember the Champions Trophy final, which was played in England. I think that might have been in the mid-2000s. We had the West Indies 8 wickets down, and the champagne was on ice. But then up stepped Bradshaw and Brown, and they spoiled the party for us.
I saw that game. The last 70 runs at runnable. 70 runs, though, to get at runnable, not 200 plus.
But that we had them 8 down, so you have to sort of consider that, we also in some ways choked. And that will probably go down as one of Michael Vaughan's biggest disappointments as a captain as well. Mr. B, what are your opinions on the Afghan Warriors? How far do you think? Whoops, Jesus Christ! How far do you think they can? How far do you think they can go now? And how impressed have you been with their performances in the tournament?
I was very impressed, Manny. I thought they were a great team. You know, I mean, they've always sort of looked like they was going to cause upsets before in the tournaments, you know, the ones before, but not really on this sort of scale. I mean, they should have beat Australia. Let's be honest, they should have done. You had a guy doing a Long John Silver impression, and they still couldn't get him out. You know, on one leg. You know, that's the inexperience there, as Arnie was saying. Sorry, Aaron. He was saying there, and you know, they kept bowling it in his arc, in Maxwell's arc. You don't do that. It was like Stokes against Brathwaite. You remember Stokes and Brathwaite in the, was it T20?
Yeah.
Oh, don't remind me of that.
But the name.
He kept feeding him, didn't he? He fed him, you know, the same ball after ball. What you do is you like do a full Yorker or something, full straight at his legs, at the bottom at his feet. The guy couldn't move. How's he going to hit that away? You know, there's so much inexperience there with Afghanistan. But I like them. I think they're a good team. I really do. A good mixture of youth and experience there. Some good young players, Gurbaz and what's it? The other ones, that was Spinners Majib and of course Rashid Khan, as we all know. You know, still a great player. Still only 25, isn't he? 24, 25.
Mid-20s or thereabouts.
He's been around ages, but he's still young. So you know. But I mean, you know, they got some good players, you know, and I think they're going to be there or thereabouts in the next few years, you know. I think they could probably at least get to a semi or a final sometime, you know.
Well, I mean, you know, that could be the hope. And yet, you know, maybe the best part about not reaching the semis this time around is that they've got to try to build on this progress and try and continue to aim higher. Because, you know, for the team where they are at the moment, they have to be honest with where they're at and what they would need. I think Kenny was mentioning that they might not have the resources necessary, but once they get them, that could be a different story. Although politics might play a role in everything, and we know about the situation in Afghanistan now. And that segues into our next team, who, of course, tragically have been told that they will no longer be playing international cricket indefinitely due to political interference. A team which rose wonderfully to win the World Cup in '96 and who, of course, have played in 2 World Cup finals since then, in 2007 and 2011. It is sad to see how they've declined as a force in, especially in limited overs cricket, where you think that, you know, you'd expect them to be a lot better. And I think Arnie will remember the Asia Cup final only too well, the way they were skittled out for a half century and, you know, rolled over. They had to play the qualifiers to get through to the World Cup. And, you know, there were so many injuries and a lot of squad problems that even Angelo Matthews, who wasn't even named in the probables, despite being a former captain, found his way into the squad, did pretty well against England. And then Sri Lanka, I think they just performed as expected. And now they've got these political problems which have, you know, caused their expulsion. Maybe they'll appeal that. I don't know. But, you know, there are problems galore. Arnie, I think we'll start with you because obviously, you know, this is an Asian team which you will have enjoyed seeing over the years. And I think you'll be quite saddened at how they've declined as such. What do you think were the biggest problems with Sri Lanka heading into the tournament, and why weren't they really assessed and dealt with, in your opinion?
I think it's the end of the golden generation, which we saw in 2014. It is very sad, like you said. I do, however, think it's the right decision, because as a cricket team on the pitch, let alone off the pitch, and the political situation in the background, I think they finished as a cricket team.
Okay, listen, Arnie, I'm sorry, but sorry to interrupt you, but Martin does have to leave. But let me just say thank you very much for coming on, sir, and thank you for introducing yourself to us. We hope to see you on very soon, but do please tell us how we can keep in touch with you in any way, or if you have a YouTube channel of your own, perhaps. I
don't have a YouTube channel. I don't have Instagram. I'm a bit lacking in that respect, but I'm happy to be invited on here as often as Hanno and you guys want me. So. And I can engage that way. So yeah, it's been great having great debate, and I wish I could stay longer, but I'm a bit tired tonight. But evenings are a bit of a juggle for me, but that's fine. And
I understand.
See you again soon.
I understand. Definitely, sir. And thank you very much again for coming on as always. And we will look to see you again
Sure.
soon. And
Thank you.
Kenny, if you also have to leave, you can just mention
fine.
that in the private chat, and we will definitely shout you out and let you go. All right, sir?
Yeah, I've got to go as well, but I just want to say thanks for having me on. It's a great festival cricket. You know, it's a shame, but you know, at the end of the day, we've got some big game cricket coming. You know, England are playing a white ball tour in the West Indies. We've got a massive series against India. So you know, cricket. You know, there's still going to be a lot of cricket to work on, but it's going to be very, very interesting. You know, to see the performances from the West Indies against England, and obviously England as well. Because remember, you know, when one world tournament ends, another one starts. Remember, we've got the 2024 T20 World Cup in the United States for the first time, and the West Indies. But you know, the West Indies have been helped out financially with their neighbours in the United States, and you know, once again, the ICC have seen an opportunity to sort of grow the game in the United States. So you know, it's a good opportunity and it's good PR for the ICC. So I'll be watching that tournament with great interest.
Absolutely. But as usual, do please tell us where we can find you, and we do hope to see you back again soon.
You can find me at KennyKen1972 on Instagram. Obviously, you know, I'm a massive gooner. I go home. All the home games got a season ticket, but I will be going to a few aways. My next away game is actually against Steve O's team on Saturday at 5:30. But that's all down to Greater Manchester Police, because the game got moved from midday because of the logistics of holding Man City Liverpool game, because of they don't want fans around across the northwest getting drunk and fighting. So you know, the game had to be moved swapped.
Hooliganism, right again. And the worst part is we've got Aaron Ramsdale starting. Are you hopeful he'll keep a clean sheet?
Less I said about Aaron Ramsdale, the better. He, you know, as much as I'm no Arteta fan, but the right decision was made big time for Aaron Ramsdale to be dropped. I don't see why Arsenal fans are being a bonnet. Oh yeah, I forgot. His passport says a lot, isn't it? You know, we all want English players to succeed, especially at a big six club. So I can understand where they're coming from. But
he's dad in goal. Oh, he's dad there.
Yeah.
He wants to play.
What's that?
Yeah, he's dad in goal. He wants to play. Bloody Ramsdale's dad.
Yeah.
Oh well,
but,
it was an opportunity for some podcasters to get some recognition. But in terms of Aaron Ramsdale, please do not make Aaron Ramsdale into the next Gordon Banks or Levi Ashley, because he's neither. See you guys soon.
You coming on
take
Saturday?
care,
Kenny,
What's
before
that?
you go, are you going on Lee's channel on Saturday for your review?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, fine. I'll catch you there.
Without fail.
Good.
Not a question worth asking. Not a question worth asking, Arnie. He's always there.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, always. But you take care of yourself and do say hello to everyone else for me. All right. Cheers, sir. Thank
you. Legend.
All right. So now back to you, obviously, Arnie, and we are talking about, the decline of a former force. You were saying, obviously, that there were some issues that they got wrong. Please go ahead and continue.
I think you came in at the right time when the interruption was made, because that was my sum up when I said they finished as a cricket team. So I feel it was the right decision to call it as it is and just save them further embarrassment, really, alongside all the issues that they're facing and that's going on.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're finished as a cricket team, because they do have some good players. Unfortunately, some of them got injured. I mean, Karunaratne, Shanaka, Mendes, Matthews can still play a little bit. But look, I really do hope that this isn't the end of Sri Lanka, because at their best, and they have produced some amazing players over the years, I would like to see them, recover from this and come back all over again. But Mr. B, obviously, the less said about Sri Lanka beating England, the better. I'm sorry I had to mention that with Matthews. But, many of us predicted that they wouldn't really amount to very much this tournament. And, of course, as I mentioned, they had to play the qualifiers and come through. What do you think's gone wrong with them, and do you see a future for them, perhaps?
Well, I don't know, Manny. I just think that it was obviously they're missing one or two of their best players, wouldn't they? I think we're out of it, and really, I don't think they had the best of tournaments. Really, unfortunately, they were found wanting at times. But I think they'll come back. I think there is quality there, isn't there? They've got youngsters coming through. I think, haven't they? Some better younger players and stuff. So obviously going to get these other better players back anyway. So I don't know about all that thing with Angelo Matthews. That was all the bloody palaver of that, wasn't it? Really. I think it's one of the strangest dismissals I've ever seen. Being timed out, but I never thought that existed, that rule, to be honest. But but anyway, I think they'll come back though. I really do. I don't think they'll be down for long. And so, one day we'll see a good team, a good Sri Lankan team again. So,
yeah. But then this is just another reminder that politics and sports should never ever mix. We've seen that happen with Zimbabwe, and now sadly with Sri Lanka. Kenya have also been affected similarly, and it's just never a nice thing to see. But
Afghanistan as well.
Yeah, so yeah, of course. Maybe not necessarily so much Pakistan, and we will come to them eventually. But another team, of course, which were beset with controversy is Bangladesh. In as much as the Tamim Iqbal episode was also a bit of a factor, maybe not so much in terms of the performances, because I thought Listen Das and company actually did do quite well at the top of the order, but maybe just with Jason Roy with England, maybe Tamim would have made a difference. So you don't just chuck away his experience like that. Now, I think Bangladesh, to me, they seem to be a team which depends a great deal on the likes of Shakib Al Hasan a great deal, because he is far and away their greatest ever player, all rounder, a fine spin bowler, excellent batsman. He's captained the team very frequently on many occasions, and he seems to be the person who literally carries that entire country on his shoulders. And we see when he's not really there very much, despite having an ex-captain Mushfiqur Rahim, the wicketkeeper, and we don't know if he'll be on playing for very long. He might also retire before the 2027 tournament. I think the team is just, too dependent on some of their more experienced players, including Shakib. And without the experience, the youngsters might not be able to have anyone to look up to, and maybe they end up floundering. So they showed a little bit of. They never really had that good a tournament either. I mean, we beat them. That just shows how bad they were. And you worry about a team like Bangladesh, because if once Shakib and Mushfiqur and Tamim and others retire, again, they've also got a problem where there isn't really that much in terms of middlemen with experience, with just enough experience to play a little bit longer and guide the youngsters there. And let's not forget Mahmudullah, who's also on the, nearing the wrong side of his 30s. So not only didn't they have the best of tournaments, Tamim or no Tamim, but sadly they might be facing a bit of an uncertain future. And they were a team which were given test status and struggled heavily. They did pick up a few wins here and there, but they still haven't flattered to see. But in the one-dayers, they've also been struggling a bit. Can they somehow be able to become a force again, like they were perhaps in 2007 when they reached the Super Sixes?
Yeah, I think Arnie's not there at the moment, is he? I think he's gone or something. So
no, he says he'll be back. He says he'll be back, but I am coming. I was going to come to you first anyway, and once he comes back, we'll get his opinion.
Well, with a name like Arnie, he will be back, won't he? Let's be honest. So, but anyway,
I just hope he's not going to bring an AK-47 with him.
Yeah. The endoskeleton coming back, yeah. But no, I think it's a shame about Bangladesh. Did they finish bottom, Manny? I think they did, didn't they? Did they finish bottom, Bangladesh?
Yeah, that reminds me. I'll take a look at the final table. I think they did. We'll confirm that. Although maybe there might have been one team which finished below them. But
might be Sri Lanka, I don't know, or something. But
Yeah, but here, yeah, but just tell us what you want to say.
He's back.
Yeah,
He's back.
but anyway, Steve, the floor's yours, mate.
Yeah, I thought it was a shame for them because I think they've been, one of probably you could call them dark horses and minnows before in other tournaments and done well. They've been fantastic and some great spinners. They've always had some talented spinners. And good batsmen. I mean, obviously Saqib, and all that is amazing. A great player. All-rounder, spinner, fielder, batsman, does it all. So it's just a shame, really, that, how they finished that tournament. But as you say, losing to us must have been an embarrassment to them, to be honest, the way we play. But, it's such a shame. I want to see them come back, though, because I think they're good enough, and I think they will. They will start coming back. I think they do well in the one-dayers, the one-day things and stuff, T20s, 50 overs. So I think they're, they're in the test arena now as well, aren't they? They've been there a little while, I think, in the test arena. So like to see them do well there as well. Yeah. But, I think it won't be long. I think they've got a good, influx of youngsters coming through. So I think they'll be back.
Yeah. And to answer your question, they actually finished 8th, only by virtue of run rate, though, ahead of Sri Lanka and the Netherlands. But I mean, they were basically among the last 3, and it was only run rate that kept them in the 8th position. So we won't be seeing them in the Champions Trophy. And Arnie, I was mentioning that the Tamim Iqbal controversy didn't really help, and they're also a team in many ways where some of the selections are, especially controversial, with some of the selectors not being afraid to voice some of their more colourful opinions of players. And I also mentioned that with Shakib and Mushfiqur and maybe Tamim and a few others potentially retiring, the team could also be in a bit of a chasm without too much in terms of experience. I mean, Mahmudullah might also won't be around for much longer. So is there a bright future for Bangladesh cricket, and where do you think they went wrong in this tournament? They only were able to beat Afghanistan and an out-of-sorts Sri Lanka, by the way.
What I can say is, even though I don't see much of a future for them, they're definitely in a much better position than, say, Sri Lanka is. They will kind of coast along, I'd say, in my opinion. I just don't see them going that extra mile that everyone thought they would 5, odd years ago, or decade. They've come a long way. I think, unfortunately, this is the peak for them. But I don't see them declining any further than they have in the past few tournaments that we've seen, including this World Cup. They will be up there in the race, top 10. But I don't see much of step up anyway, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And of course, once Mushfiqur, Shakib and company retire, that could certainly be the end of the golden generation. It will be a long time before we see even more players of that ilk coming out of Bangladesh. But I mean, they will come eventually, though. It might just take some time. But I think maybe Bangladesh is the type of team where you have to say, you've got to give them some leeway to develop and just wait for new flowers to sprout. And of course, speaking of flowers, this particular country is famous for its tulips. The Netherlands, the nemesis of South Africa, and obviously, they beat Bangladesh as well. They had some of their fine moments, but also didn't really finish very highly enough. In fact, if we take a look at the table, they actually finished. They actually finished dead last with a pretty poor run rate. I think some heavy defeats ended up costing them. But, the Netherlands are a really interesting team because several of their players, mind you, have had experience playing league cricket and county cricket in England and elsewhere. And, of course, there are several South African-born players who ended up qualifying to play for Holland. Let's not forget a certain Roelof van der Merwe, who ended up becoming the nemesis of his country of birth once again, as did the likes of as did a couple of other players in that Dutch team, and they're certainly a team that do know how to play limited overs cricket very well, and maybe in conditions favouring them, they could be much more of a force. I do not need to mention how they beat us in our home 2020 World Tournament. That was a humiliating defeat, and that was a humiliating defeat, and we never really recovered from that in that tournament. Although eventually we went on to win in the West Indies, so maybe we need some Jamaican rum to get us going. I don't know. But Arnie, you take a look at the Netherlands, and obviously you see you could say that maybe they set out what they wanted to do, which was perhaps getting one or two, really good shock wins, and then just proving that they were more than capable of competing. I think it's fair to say, though, that without a really prolific batsman in their team, they may struggle quite a bit. And it could also be that, we might have seen the last and the best of Roelof van der Merwe and several others who are also approaching the wrong side of their 30s, perhaps. But, I'd like to think that we're in the Netherlands, although it's obviously famous more for its football, total football, of course, as we all know. Cricket might just be getting a little bit more of a foothold, and they have been qualifying for World Cups dating all the way back to the mid-90s. 96 they played, although they didn't do too well, but they've been continuing to play and churning out players. This is a team that could consistently do as well as they can and continue to be around. And I don't necessarily know if they'll end up earning test match status like Bangladesh or even Ireland, but they are showing that they are more than worthy of being in these tournaments.
As I like to say, especially after the win over the Proteas, South Africa is orange, but they have done really well. It's just these other big games that they need to get through. I mean, you can't always pinpoint South Africa and make that the upset. I mean, you guys as well, to an extent, because they have beaten you before, right? I'd like to see them go one step further.
Thanks for reminding us, Arnie. Thanks.
Didn't mean to, but just thought I'd put that there just to cover them, as well, right? Van der Merwe, he's a trophy winner. I'm not sure if you both knew. Steve, you probably did, because I think Manny probably as well, because you follow the county circuit. T20
I've seen it before, playing before.
My English team that I support, Somerset. So I think he's definitely got at least a year or two left in him, potentially even more. I don't want to hype him up too much, because when I was growing up and I watched him play, even in the IPL, he struck me as more of a batsman who could finish really well. And then what happened is he turned more into a spinner, and he's doing really well with that bowling. So, if they can get maybe 2-3 players, kind of like he is, then you never know what that team can do. But I've seen enough from them to think okay, they are here to stay, but I just don't see them going that step gear up. So not sure what you think on that, Steve.
Well, I mean, Kenny, before we come to Steve, I mean, Kenny did say that, when one World Cup ends, another one begins. And in 24, everyone's going to go all the way to America and the West Indies. So it could very well be that tournament might be Roelof's swan song with the Dutch, and what a memorable journey it's been. And maybe that could inspire some more youngsters to come in. But Steve, how did you enjoy the Dutch?
Well, I was going to say probably a lot more than some of the others. I mean, South Africa are probably saying, to quote the great Graham Taylor, "Do I not like orange?"
God rest his soul, of course.
Yeah. R.I.P. Graham up there. But I think well, I thought they were quite good again, but obviously they're not as good, like they've done in the past. Big upsets before. Obviously, they did beat South Africa. That was a big one to do. But obviously, they beat us, as we all know, as Arnie's already mentioned. But, and they've beaten, I think they've beaten Australia, haven't they, in the tournament, I believe?
They might have. I'm not too sure. I'll have to look that up.
I think they have, but
we would have remembered. Australia would have remembered it. But maybe archive.
Yeah.
And,
I'm sure they've beaten them in Summit, though. Might not have been a tournament.
Zimbabwe.
I mean, listen, this is why we have Wikipedia, and I'm on it right now, but keep talking, mate.
Yeah, I mean, so I think they were a decent team again, and I think they'll come again because they're obviously going to probably qualify yet again. I wouldn't be surprised. So And obviously, likes of Van der Merthyr, you know, he was great. You know, he looks a really good player. We've seen him before, experienced the course, so he's been in other things, other sort of IPL, I think, hasn't he, and stuff like that.
RCB.
So, you know, so I think they've got to, if they can add more, as Arnie's just said, they've got to add a few more players, and then maybe there'll be a real force, for, you know, for future tournaments and stuff. So whether they can get into the test match scene, you know, I think that'd be good for them if they can develop that. You know, that'd be fantastic. So
Steve, I don't know if you know. I wanted to tell you, because when I said it on one of the previous streams, I'm not sure you're watching, but that game, right? They beat South Africa. Me personally, I didn't see that as an upset. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I don't know. I thought South Africa were a good team in the World Cup. I think they're a great team, but obviously, okay, people will say they choked against Australia. I don't think they did. I thought they done well against Australia. I thought it was tight, a really good semi. You know, there was more in that semi than the other one. Because India,
we'll talk about South Africa, obviously, but I was actually going to sort of say right now, Steve, that there are 6 cricket grounds in the Netherlands which have hosted international games before. So most of those grounds are pretty much in the center of the country. If they can grow the game to try to include that maybe in the north and the south, then that would be obviously quite good. And that can also maybe attract some people from across the borders maybe to come and check them out. And, you know, not only have they beaten South Africa twice, they've also beaten us twice in 2020 international tournaments. Once in 2009, and the other one in 2014.
Was that the Stuart Broad thing with 2009? Was it Stuart Broad when he didn't run him out or something, didn't collect the ball?
That might have. I think that might have been Paul Collingwood, maybe, or something like that. I'm not too sure, but
I seem to remember something with Stuart Broad and he didn't collect it or something.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But it was bad at the time. Obviously, we lost. So.
Yeah, quite. But as I've said, I think the Netherlands really need a more prolific batsman. They seem to depend a lot on their captain Scott Edwards to try to get some of the runs. They do have some batsmen like Max O'Dowd and Vikramjit Singh who are capable of doing well at the top of the order. But I just think that when it comes to batting, they're a little bit too inconsistent. Perhaps if they can get someone who can consistently score and really take that form into major tournaments, then they could be a threat. Because bowling-wise, you know, nobody can doubt them. They're honest, they're accurate, and even if they don't necessarily have the express pace, they're not going to give you too much to work with. So maybe that's something they will need to work with. And speaking of working with teams, the grass wasn't as green as their jerseys. Goes without saying. I think Kenny pretty much nailed it perfectly when he said that if there's one team that enjoys harming itself a great deal, it has to be Pakistan, even more than England, perhaps, because all the talent they have, they just seem to, you know, come up short in a few disciplines. It was funny, Arnie, and you might know about this. Wasim Akram pretty much blasted the players for their supposed lack of fitness, saying they're probably eating about 8 kilos of goat meat every single day or something like that. And don't get me wrong, goat meat is delicious, but
I never tried it. I don't know.
Yeah, but the problem is because it's got a bit of a higher percentage of fat per unit weight than say beef or chicken. It's not exactly what nutritionists would recommend, which is why I don't eat goat very much these days. I do enjoy chicken and I do enjoy beef, especially given that I'm got a new gym regimen going on. But back to Pakistan. A lot of old issues cropping up in terms of their lack of fitness. Certainly, Babar Azam's form was a bit of a problem, and he has, of course, since stepped down as captain in all formats. And, you know, they've appointed a few recently retired players into plum positions in the selection committee. And I just don't know if, you know, that's really a good thing to do going forward. Maybe it is nice to see some young blood in the team in that area. But I just wonder if, having just recently retired, they're going to have the necessary authority to really make those decisions. And with Haris Rauf also suddenly making himself unavailable for the Test series. I just wonder if after this failure, and obviously this failure which cost Babar Azam his captaincy, how do Pakistan move forward from this?
I think they've got a very, very talented crop of individuals. For me, the problem is, and I've seen this from the last World Cup in UAE, not the one in Australia, the one before that as well. I mean, they did all right last one, getting to a final, stopping New Zealand as well. But where it cropped for me was that semi-final against Australia, when they had it kind of in their hands. I wouldn't say they choked or bottled it. No, obviously not. But this is where the mentality part comes in of being a team. Like, the individuals are great, don't get me wrong. Like Afridi with the bowling department, Rizwan at the top. They just can't gel as a team. And that's something I'm also struggling to understand. As a rival, I feel sad on that point. See that part. I never really got it.
Right. And Steve, let me come to you now. One thing which seems apparent to me is that whenever Pakistan have had their greatest successes, it's probably been due to some good leadership at the top. You obviously think of the likes of Imran Khan in 1992, maybe Sarfaraz Ahmed and the likes of Misbah-ul-Haq and others. You know, obviously, when you have some really good leaders in the team who are able to truly unite a team with their authority and their ability to perform and inspire, you know, the team pretty much ends up, you know, looking up to you and really playing for you in a way. I just think that with Babar Azam, and obviously, you know, he has since resigned from the captaincy due to his own form struggling. Maybe he just wasn't quite able to get going the way he would have liked. Obviously, in the World 2020, when he, against all odds, it must be said, they reached the final, he had a big role to play as batsman, and we could see some of his best form in the latter stages when it counted. But this time around, he wasn't able to get going. And of course, he has since resigned. I don't think they've named an ODI captain as of yet, but the new Test captain is Shan Masood, and Shaheen Afridi is the new T20 captain, or something like that. And I just wonder, is there a future for a team which seems to be unable to produce some really good leaders? And are there no leaders in the Pakistan team who can literally, you know, inspire the team to move forward the way the likes of Imran Khan, maybe Wasim Akram or Sarfaraz Ahmed or Misbah-ul-Haq were able to do?
Well, as you both said, both you gents have said that they've got the talent, but, you know, they just always seem to be found lacking. I don't know what it is. There's always something in the tournament. You know, they beat, you know, get some great wins, big wins, and then they somehow, you know, capitulate and things, a little bit like in England in a way. You know, when England most of the time capitulate with a bat or whatever, you know. And you think, well, you know, they've got all this talent in the world, and then what is going wrong? Why does it all go wrong for them, you know? And they should be winning more things than they do, you know, and getting into the fight. I thought they were shooing maybe for the semis at least, Pakistan. But it just never materialised. But as you say, Babar Azam's gone, so you know, I think you know, now they need to find someone else. They need to find another lead. They've obviously got, do you say, Afridi and all that. Captain, what is it? The T20s? He's captain, or T20s. And the other guy. What's the other guy's name? That was the
Shan Masood for the Test.
Masood, yeah. Yeah. So they're obviously they've got it all sort of sorted in that, but maybe they obviously now need to get to. I don't know what the sort of other players they've got coming through. I don't know the you know, the talent coming through. I don't know if there's quick bowlers, spinners, or what coming through. Do you know, Arnie, of anyone?
I'm surprised Nawaz wasn't picked.
Sorry, mate.
So I'm surprised they didn't pick Nawaz. You mentioned spinner, so that came to mind.
Yeah.
That was a surprise for me that his exclusion was in this time. I'm not too sure why. And the other one, it's quite a few things, like you're saying.
Yeah, got the good youngsters. Was it Naveen?
Nasim, injured. Got injured.
Nasim Shah being injured. That didn't help, obviously.
That was a shame, yeah, because he's good, great bowler, I think. quick
Yeah,
and
definitely.
sharp and, you know, aggressive. You know, so, I mean, they've got good players, I think, and they'll come back again. I think they're another team that come back, probably going to win Summit again. I mean, you know, some tournament, they're bound to, you know, it's going to happen at some stage, isn't it? So I don't think it's a panic for them. I think they got, you know, capable of winning, coming back. So.
Well, I mean, we'll have to see, but I think it's fair to say, as Kenny said, that they can be their own worst enemies at times, and one can only hope that they will eventually get their act together under some new leadership, and hopefully with Babar Azam getting back to what he apparently does best, scoring runs. It's worked for, it's worked for the likes of Joe Root and company. Maybe it'll work for him. And of course, we come to the two semi-finalists. You were speaking about South Africa, obviously, and, you know, Stephen, you were talking about how maybe it wasn't necessarily a choke in that sense of the word. I think they just got a little bit outplayed, maybe. But they were the form team going into the tournament, it has to be said. And, you know, for them to obviously miss out on yet another final after doing so much brilliant work, it's a kick in the teeth for them. And, you know, you sort of have to ask the question, are they just destined to never be the bride, but always be a bridesmaid?
Yeah. Bit like New Zealand, really, you'd think. Looking at it, it's always them as well, isn't it? They're always the bridesmaid. Yeah, it is a shame. I thought they would have maybe got to the final. I was hoping they'd beat Australia because, you know, I thought that would make it, really, if they could have beaten Australia. But and they did almost. They almost done it. I mean, 212 really wasn't enough, to be honest. But if they'd made at least 20, 30 more runs, I think that would have been, you know, competitive, really, and maybe could have done it. I mean, you see that guy that was, he should have reviewed, what's that, Kurtzia? That quick bowler.
Yeah.
He looks good. I rate him. He looks really real fine for them. Quick bowler. You know, very, very rapid. You know, he really gave Australia a lot of problems when he was bowling. But if he had reviewed that, it actually hit the top of his arm, not his glove, and all that. And that's what they went up for. And he, maybe if he carried on, they might have got extra runs, the bonus runs. So I think, you know, they may have had a better chance.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they almost did do it. You know, they got them 7 down, Australia, didn't they? So, you know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, memories, of course, of that amazing semi-final in 1999 where obviously, you know, the choker tag pretty much got stuck on the South Africans in perpetuity. To this day, I think only Lance Klusner will know what he was thinking when he took that single and ran towards the dressing room, leaving poor Alan Donald over there just, you know, completely devastated and heartbroken. But it's something that, you know, both of them will have to live with. And, you know, there is, of course, obviously going to be a really bright future for them. And they are, of course, going to be among the teams that will be expected to challenge for the major trophies. So the thing is, in as much as you'd like to think that they shouldn't necessarily have to worry, questions will be asked, and rightly so. And, you know, it's sort of, it's just the way it is when it comes to international cricket, I guess, especially at that sort of a level. Arnie, what were your impressions?
Sorry, Manny. A lot of their
No. Yeah, you were...
De Kock's obviously going, so...
yeah.
You know, left.
De Kock will be crowing no more, but he crowed magnificently in this tournament, it has to be said. Arnie, what were your impressions on South Africa, and how hopeful were you of them going far in the tournament?
I think they've done really well. They've overachieved big time, because if you remember, back in the early stages of the tournament, when we had some of these streams, remember me saying they're minnows? They've done really well. I never thought they'd get to a semi-final, so they're done extremely well. The fact that they pushed the Aussies kind of all the way, that's for them. I'd be very proud as a South African fan. They had no right to be in that semi-final, but they've overachieved. So well done to them.
And yet you can't be gracious towards the Afghanistan team after that loss to Australia. You really are a person with
Nah,
strong
that's-
views, my friend. But you know, it is what it is.
I
And
explained my reasons.
yes, you explained your
You know,
reasons.
from
We all heard.
Afghanistan,
Yes,
they're beating
yes,
South
yes.
Africa as well.
He sticks to his opinions, Arnie, don't you?
I'm telling
Stick
you.
to him, mate.
Yeah. Listen. I'm just taking the mickey. We're all entitled to
Yeah.
opinions. It is what it is. But look, obviously, they do have a good future with whether or not Bavuma stays on as captain. Aidan Markram is a good deputy. Obviously, there will be some issues about Bavuma's lack of runs, but the South African coach was very quick to make it clear that Bavuma was a very important player in the team's plans for his captaincy and his overall leadership. But you do expect him to start performing. You can't have another Mike Brearley situation, can you, Steve?
No, you definitely can't. But I think they're obviously gonna come back. South Africa. I never thought of them as minnows. I don't know what Arnie said that for, but you know they're not really
They
minnows,
are,
are
in
they?
my opinion.
I mean, I think
Minnows.
they're a
Go
big
on,
team
Steve, sorry.
still. South Africa. You can't say they're small because they've always
But Steve,
you know. Okay,
Just quickly, you remember that series, right? When they got whitewashed. I know Australia did to us as well in 2016.
oh yeah.
But you're at home. A B team they had, fair enough. But Australia also had a B team. They didn't send their strongest team. At least win one game. You can't get whitewashed at home.
No.
But again, they moved on from it. They came back really good in this World Cup. In the longer format, they got to semi-final. But for me, I need to see more before I can, kind of change my opinion a bit for now. But that's where I stand,
but
as you're saying.
well, here's the thing about these bilateral series. All right, every now and then you're going to get a shock result with one team unexpectedly getting whitewashed or another team simply not being able to perform well. But you really can't put too much weightage on some of these bilateral series, especially with talk of one-day cricket declining as a bit of a spectacle in a way. But look, we can all agree that South Africa are going to be there or thereabouts. They will challenge for the top honors. And of course, you said it, Steve, we can say the same thing about South Africa as we might about this team. An outstanding team effort, great spirit. They certainly won a lot of hearts with the way the fight they showed against teams like South Africa and others. Just fell short in the end, sadly, but they can take some pride from this tournament, although there is, of course, a feeling with them that maybe it might not happen. And for all the talk about how Williamson, might not have been worthy of coming back into the team, he showed his importance to them, even as a batsman, even with, his injuries and all that. And there is still a future, but you think with the likes of Williamson and a few others maybe possibly retiring, at least with them, though, there is some talent coming through. Cricket has become exceptionally popular again, maybe not quite as much as the rugby, but still very much there or thereabouts. So they can still look forward to being there or thereabouts, and they are having a pretty good phase right now. What do you say to that, Steve?
Yeah, definitely. I've always liked New Zealand. I like the way they play cricket. They got spirit, and they got some talent as well. There are some fine players they've got, quick bowlers, like still a Trent Bolt still there, and Lockie Ferguson, and obviously Ravindra now. I never knew about him before until I see him in this, and I thought it was going to be a one-off thing he done against England, but he took it all the way through the tournament. He's great, batting, bowling. He was fantastic, and they got a real star there, New Zealand. To come for the next few years and that. So, so I think they've got plenty of talent there. And one day it's going to happen for them. I think they're going to win one of these. It's got to, you've got to, as you say, experience still there, Williamson and everything. So, they're definitely going to win something. I want them to be honest. I think they deserve to win.
But the thing about New Zealand
as well, the right spirit they play.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, you can't not really admire them for the way they play the game, as you've said. But a big problem with New Zealand right now, and we're pretty much seeing this as well with their rugby team, is that they seem to also have a problem for being a little bit strapped for cash at the moment, which is why we see a large number of their players, including the likes of Trent Bolt and others, opt out of contracts to try their luck in the franchises where they can make more of a living. And it did affect some New Zealand rugby for quite a bit of time, but they've always found a way to, move on from those losses and continue to compete in World Cups and reach finals, in some cases even win them. With the cricket, obviously, they haven't been able to win very much, but they do produce some talent. And you just feel that with Williamson and maybe the likes of Southey and Boult also coming closer to the end of their careers, even with the talent coming through, it will fall on the likes of maybe Latham and Ravindra and others to try and maybe guide them through a little bit longer. But we can say that the future is bright. But will there be some sort of a problem, though, Steve? And I'll come to you afterwards, Arnie, with the relative lack of money in the game in New Zealand.
Yeah, it could be, man. It could be. I think because, as you say, that's an important thing now to have some sort of financial back in there is very important. But, if they're still producing the talent, I don't see why it's going to be a problem. Because I think it seems like they've got some good young players coming through. Obviously, Ravindra is one of them. So I just think they've got real talent. And I don't think even if they lose Williamson or Southey or anyone like that, they've still got something there to carry on, and they'll always be there. They'll always be, somewhere near everything, always close to winning. But I think they will win one. I think it's going to happen one day. Whether it be the next one is in America. Did you say it was in America?
No, that's a T20. I think the 2027 one will. The 2027 one will be in South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Namibia. So after 24 years, it returns to the African continent.
Right, yeah, but I mean they've got a great T20 team as well, haven't they? So I mean it's that's also possible. They could win that. So I always think they're going to be there. They're going to be there, and they're not going away, New Zealand. So anyway, over to you, Arnie. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about basically the lack of relative lack of finances, which sees some cricketers opting to move to pastures new. And how do you think New Zealand cricket will be in maybe the next few years in that regard?
Actually, internationally, I wasn't really aware of their financial situation until you mentioned it just now. What I was aware of, apparently their domestic circuit, the reason it's not that popular is because it collides, I think, with the Big Bash League. So they don't get that much recognition on their national T20 competition. And I think that could be a big downfall. So maybe it segues into what you're saying about the international front. On the international front, this whole financial thing, it's kind of a barrier that's maybe stopping them from moving forward. But that's just sprung to me now, because the only idea I had about them financially was back in their domestic circuit. Now, unless they can find a way around that and get some foreign players in, make the league even much more attractive than it is already, which I don't think is much, because not only does it clash with the BBL, you don't get any foreign players playing there, and it's not even spoken of. So it's always been a head scratcher for me.
Yeah, that's the money coming into it, and maybe it will take some rich New Zealand billionaire to try to be a big benefactor and sort of really pump money into that league and entice people to come over there. And one thing else to say about New Zealand, and I think Steve might agree with me on this, and you might as well, Arnie, is that the climate in New Zealand is very similar to that of England, and they are, of course, exactly on the opposite side of the world to England, with a 12-hour time difference, I believe. And if you take a look at the conditions over there, the climate is very, very similar, and you do have a large English, expatriate population in New Zealand. Maybe not as much as Australia, but they do love living over there. It is a very quiet pace of life, and when there is some money involved, I think it can maybe you can entice some, English professionals to come over there and play, and maybe they can have a good time of it. Maybe they can earn some money over there during the winter months, because of course summer in New Zealand is winter back in the UK and vice versa. So that could very well be a way to try and get some players to come in and play over there. Steve, what do you think? Would you like to visit New Zealand perhaps?
Oh yeah, I've always wanted to go there, Manny. I've always have. So I always like the look of New Zealand. Lovely place, location. You see it on Lord of the Rings and all that. They've used it obviously, and Peter Jackson, of course, directing it there. It's where he comes from. So, but it's good. I like to see it evolve more, New Zealand, because they seem to have a great team, and I'd love to see it all get even more coming to the fore in their country. Shame about what he was just saying about all that with the financial thing and colliding with the Big Bash and all that sort of thing. But I think they've got to sort something out. I don't know, maybe. I mean, I know we always know they have a big opposition with Australia. They're sort of neighbours, but enemies at the same time, as we know.
Right.
But if they could get something going, maybe with them, I don't know if that could happen. But I like to see it improve there and evolve more. So I think they deserve it. They deserve success. So
yeah,
Steve, you also know. I'm not sure how true this is, but apparently I read in some of the articles, right, that some New Zealand players themselves opt to play in the Big Bash League rather than their own. But maybe you two might have an idea. But I don't know fully, but I've come across that source.
Yeah, listen, that's the thing, because I mean, it's a no-brainer really, because the Big Bash provides more in terms of television exposure. But once there is a huge influx of cash into the New Zealand League, I think you'll see that changing, because look, New Zealanders may need to earn money. I mean, we all need to earn money. It's a bittersweet symphony. You make ends meet, you're a slave to the money, and then eventually we all know what happens after that. But New Zealand, thank you very much, mate.
They'll get more foreign players in as well, a bit like England players in the SAT 20.
Yeah, I'll let you know. I'll let you know, because listen, like you mentioned the SAT 20. If the New Zealand cricket board can try and get an influx of cash into the game and try and entice more people to come in, you will see some growth over there. So don't rule out New Zealand just yet. And of course, just in case you're wondering, I also happen to have met a nice New Zealand winemaker when I was back in Florida, and I can tell you they do make some really good quality wines. I am not promoting drinking on this channel, but for some of our older members, if you do enjoy good wine, New Zealand is the place to go. And I don't mean whining and whinging. I mean proper quality wine. And on that, without a wine, we are going to end this stream. We've been on for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. It was a bit of a bumper stream, and probably one of the best streams I've been on. I'm really glad to have hosted it, but big up to Hanno for organizing it. We've already had Martin and Kenny shout themselves out. Arnie, as the name says, you were, Arnie said he'd be back. You came back without an AK-47. And as you leave, tell us where we can find you and how we can keep in touch with you and what you got coming up in your life or thereabouts.
Yeah, perfect. Just the same source, which the stream is obviously going to go on, even though it's primarily a football page. But I've been sharing quite a bit more cricket content. Will I change the name? Probably not. It's always good to have a bit on the side. So it's the Football for Life show. And you will be on there as well. I'll continue to keep that going, appearing on these streams. And let's just keep all the good vibes going. And it was a pleasure to be on. Good to have you both as well. So, that's everything from my side.
Cheers, Arnie.
Absolutely. And Steve, you came in a bit late, floated in late like a butterfly, but you stung just like a bee. Good to have you on as always. Don't be too late, all right? I mean, I try not to be too late for my streams, and it's not. But anyway, listen, always good to have you on.
I apologise for being late.
It's all right. I'm taking the mickey, you know. But anyway,
it's all right.
But anyway, tell us where we can find you, what you got coming up, and your predictions, of course, for Brentford against Arsenal.
Oh, right, here we go. Yeah, I thought this was a cricket channel, but never mind, mate. I will do that in a minute. But anyway, right, it's Mr. B Hive Football Chat, Mr. B for Life 182. Obviously, that's all going well. I've got loads of videos out, and the views are still going up on all of them. My last one, the debate show, that's still going up, the views, and good to see people still watching everything I'm doing. That's great. Thanks for the support, everyone. And my subs are up to 69, but I want to get them higher, obviously up to 100 by the end of the year. Be great. So if people could still like and sub if you're new and everything, smash the likes. Yeah, obviously got, as Manny said, got the preview coming up against a certain team called Arsenal. Yeah, so well, that'd be actually, I'm doing one with Luca. I'll be on his channel on Friday. I may even do one for myself as well, possibly on maybe early on Saturday before the game or whatever. So, so I might do that. But obviously, I'll be on Luca's, so try and check me out on that. And thanks for having me on, Manny, and Arnie and the other lads that were here. The legend that is Kenny Ken. Great to see him on a stream, because I ain't seen him on anything for a while. Obviously, apart from with Lee and all that, and Jez, but it's great to have him on, and of course Martin, great to see him in there. Thanks everyone, and come on you bees.
Come on you bees, let's buzz.
Also, just
I
a quick
believe that's
what Manny. I'll be on
Yeah.
Sophia's channel doing the preview for the Inter Juve game. Just put that out there as well.
Okay,
Milan.
cool.
What are you doing?
So I'll be doing no. Preview.
Oh, preview. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'll come on.
Okay.
I'll come on for that. When's that? When's that, Arnie? When you doing that?
So we're gonna be doing it before. The game is actually Sunday evening, but we'll get it done before. So
Okay,
around
mate,
Friday. Yeah. So it should be up live.
Come on, yeah.
Okay,
So
so it'll be good to see some Serie A football being discussed as well. And as always, big up to everyone in the chat. Well, rather almost everyone. And I am going to say this. Those of you who see it fit to spam this board with some inane comment which isn't related to the matter we're discussing, I would suggest you cease and desist. There is a reason why I have not bothered to mention your name or credit you or put your chat up. Next time you try and spam this chat with any inappropriate messages, according to my discretion or even Hanno's discretion, we will put you in a timeout. So, as Mikel Arteta would say, shut your mouths and eat them. But thankfully, I had to say that because it's a bit funny how he says it, really. I don't like the accent, but it is what it is. But on a happier note...
Guys. It's an embarrassment, guys. It's an embarrassment.
Yes, it is an embarrassment, but it shouldn't be allowed to spoil what has been a terrific stream. So thanks once again to our panelists. Thanks to everyone in the chat who's contributed. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the sporting action coming up. Premiership and football returns. We do have some... I think the qualifiers are still going on. I don't know how Wales are doing. I'll check that out later. But I think everyone wants the Premiership football to return very soon. There will be some more international cricket coming up very soon. And, of course, we might cover some of that on this show. But until then, as always, take care of yourselves. Stay safe and stay happy. Don't do anything that the panelists or I wouldn't do. But as always, it is farewell to thee and goodbye to each and every one of you. Cheers.